Ravin Gandhi, GMM Nonstick Coatings founder and CEO. He joins me now. The company provides coatings for the world's biggest makers of pots, pans, and bakeware, essential day-to-day stuff. Ravin, let me start with the job picture. For your company, what have you done? Have you hired? Have you furloughed? Have you fired? Have you increased wages? Have you taken away pay? Can you give me an insight, please?
Yeah, well, I'm proud of the fact that we haven't furloughed anybody. We've not fired anybody. Because we do have a large operation in China, we were kind of the canary in the coal mine. We started to see in January that this virus was going to be a far bigger story than people realized. So we put a furlough on hiring at that point across all of our various locations. And at the moment, we're expecting to not do any hiring until the end of Q2. At that point, like so many other businesses, we are going to reassess the economy, our client demand, and then see if we're going to change that policy.
Something that I've been concerned about is a second wave, whereas companies wind up reopening, bring back X amount of their workers that they furloughed, and then they realize the business isn't there, and then they have to do a round of firing then. What kind of economic forecast do you see that either puts you into that level or avoids it?
So year to date, we're down, unfortunately, about 30% year over year. And that's kind of ironic because we've got people, my company makes nonstick coatings for pots and pans. People are historically staying home and cooking for obvious reasons. So on the margin, we're actually seeing decent client demand, but that is being more than outweighed negatively with conservatism with our multi-billion-dollar clients not wanting to build too much inventory. So it still put us down about 30%. So I'm hoping that we can claw up, from that with Q3 and Q4. But there is just so much opacity with what's going to happen in this post-corona world. And the other thing, in my industry specifically, with anyone who sources or produces in China or in Asia, the global supply chains have just taken this series of body blows because in terms of the trains running on time, first the tariffs scrambled the situation in China, and then this virus just basically nuked what was remaining. So in China, we are open. We have a factory that's shipping, that's getting back up and running, but we have a plant in India, which is completely closed right now by law. So I hope that, in the long run, this does come out, and if so, we definitely will be hiring again.
Just as cloudy, though, for you as it is for us. So a flip question, if we do reopen and things actually are good, let's say demand's, boom, 100% tomorrow, can you meet the demand? How quickly will it take you to ramp up?
Yeah, we have a decent amount of working capital, so I mean we would be able to do that. We specialize kind of in speed, so I do think that we would be able to meet that scenario. That's obviously a problem that most people would want to have, and I would also say I'm sounding very gloomy so far, but in the long run, I am pretty optimistic about the American consumer. If you look at things like Amazon, it's at an all-time high. Americans like their stuff, and clearly the stock market right now is very divorced from the underlying economy. But I think that that's from a short-term basis, and I hope that I hope that in a short period of time this virus is going to seem like it was a long time ago, and I think people will travel and go to restaurants, and America's been through worse stuff like this.
Well, this is unique in that we've never had this kind of pandemic before. Also, now it's the more rumblings about China and the U.S. In terms of some issues, and particularly harsher words from President Trump. So, do we see a resurgence of that? Are you keying into that more? How do you see it?
Well, I've spoken a number of times about how the tough rhetoric over the last 12 to 18 months has led a lot of people like my American clients to move out of China to places like Indonesia and Vietnam. That kind of normalized when the president said that we had this phase one deal. I haven't seen anything on the margin that to give you a reaction, if anything, in the last few days about his rhetoric has changed anything. But, we went from thinking in January, if we were ever going to open our Chinese facilities, and then by mid-March we were kind of up and shipping. And obviously myself, like so many other people, my life is a series of Zoom and video calls with clients and with my people. And I can tell you, when we do a lot of calls with American buyers, with a lot of people, 10 or 20 people from China on the line, and really the virus isn't even discussed that much for the last few weeks. People are really talking about projects and meeting demand and shipping. So in that sense, it's kind of good because it starts to feel a little bit more normal, as opposed to, a lot of these huge fears that we had about China.
In terms of any cash flow issues, like how do you look at the stimulus that we've seen out of D.C., the payroll protection program? Are you participating in any of that?
Well, we aren't able to participate in the PPP just because we're, I think, too large for it. And we bought my company was acquired by a very large multi-billion-dollar corporation a couple of years ago. So we aren't specifically taking it. I'm also a tech startup investor, so I'm in 3 or 4 deals that these tech companies have raised 6 figures, 7 figures from PPP. So PPP, I think, is an amazing program, and I hope that that, along with what the Fed is doing, is enough to get this pump primed.
All right, really appreciate the clarity. Thank you very much for joining us, Ravin Gandhi of GMM Nonstick Coatings. Thanks a lot.